Sometimes people come to me not only for advice, but also for the right to speak their mind. Recently, a man came to the parish. He looked as if his world had collapsed before his eyes. Sitting down opposite me, he was silent for a long time, and then he spoke. His words were full of bitterness that had accumulated in his heart over many years. Today, I want to share his story with you. It is a story that reminds us how fragile human relationships can be. Here are his words. My name is Dale Harrison, and I am 58 years old. I worked as a truck driver for 25 years, traveling across the country from California to Maine until I broke my back while loading a truck in Billings. It happened 3 years ago. I was lifting a heavy box, something cracked in my lower back, and that was the end of my driving career. Now I live on disability in a house on the outskirts of Helena, Montana. It's a small two-story house that my wife Linda and I bought 30 years ago when the kids were still young. Linda died of cancer 4 years ago, and I've been living alone ever since. We have two children, our son Blake, 35, who works as an electrician, and our daughter Kira, 32. Blake is married to a good woman named Tessa, and they have two children, Colin and Emma. But there have always been problems with Kira, especially after she divorced her husband Mark 5 years ago. On that October morning when it all began, I woke up early, as usual. My back hurt. It always does when it rains. It was drizzling outside and leaves were falling from the trees, covering the yard with a yellow carpet. I drank my coffee in the kitchen and watched the news on TV, the same old political squabbles and economic problems. Then I decided to visit my younger sister Nora. She lived on the other side of town, in a small house next to the library where she had worked for 20 years. After her husband Jim died 6 months ago, Nora became very depressed, and I tried to visit her as often as possible. Jim was a good man. He worked as a mechanic in a car repair shop and loved fishing and baseball. He had a sudden heart attack right at work. Nora was having a hard time coping with the loss. They had been married for 28 years and had no children. Nora met me on the porch with a cup of coffee in her hands. She was wearing Jim's old plaid robe, which was too big for her thin frame. Her hair was uncombed, and she had dark circles under her eyes. She looked 10 years older than her 54. Dale, I'm glad you came, she said quietly, her voice hoarse. Come in. The coffee is fresh. We went into the kitchen. The house smelled musty and lonely. Unwashed dishes were scattered everywhere, and empty cans of canned food stood on the table. It was clear that Nora hardly ever cooked and ate whatever she could find. Nora, are you eating properly? I asked, sitting down at the table. What's the point of cooking for one? She shrugged and poured me some coffee from an old enamel pot. I open a can of soup and I'm full. Outside the window, a light rain was falling, and the maple leaves in her yard had already turned yellow and fallen. The yard was overgrown. Jim had always kept the lawn mowed, but now the grass was knee-high. Nora was silent for a long time, then sighed deeply. You know, Dale, I thought I'd be used to it by now. It's been 6 months, but every morning I wake up and wait for Jim to bring me coffee in bed, like he always did. 30 years in a row, can you imagine? Every morning. I nodded. After Linda died, I also couldn't get used to the empty bed and the silence in the house for a long time. Even now, I sometimes turn over at night to hug her, and there's nothing there. At least I can distract myself at the library, Nora continued, sipping her coffee in small sips. People come in, I check out books, I keep the catalogs. But at home, the house feels like a stranger's now. It's too big for one person. I even turn on the TV just for the noise. I sit there in the evening, and the house is so quiet that my ears ring. She got up and poured me some more coffee. Her hands were shaking slightly. Her nerves were getting the better of her. Yesterday, my neighbor Mrs. Green came by. She said she could hear me talking to myself. I hadn't even noticed. It turns out that I now talk to Jim out loud. I tell him how my day went, what happened at the library. Is that normal? It's normal, I said. After Linda died, I talked to her too, for about 3 months. I asked her where she put the salt, complained about the weather. It'll pass. Nora sat back down and looked at me intently with her tired brown eyes. How are the kids? Blake? Kira? I haven't seen them in a while. Blake's fine. He's got a lot of work, plenty of orders. Electricians are in high demand right now. They're rewiring everywhere, building new houses. The kids are growing up, going to school. Tessa is a good wife, a good homemaker. But Kira, I paused, not knowing how to explain. I last saw her a month ago. She said she got a job as a cashier at the supermarket on Main Street. Nora sat back down and looked at me intently. She had the kind of look that people who have read a lot and seen a lot have. Dale, what's wrong with her? You're talking about Kira in a strange way. Did something happen? Nothing special. She's just complicated. After her divorce from Mark, she completely lost her way. She'd find a job, then quit. She'd rent an apartment, then move out. She seemed unsettled. I didn't tell my sister about Kira's drinking problem. Nora was already dealing with her own grief. Why burden her with my worries too? Besides, Kira had really been holding it together for the last 2 years. She wasn't drinking. She was working. She had even started dating someone. The guy's name was Rick, and he worked in a car repair shop. Nothing special, but at least he wasn't a drunk. What about Mark? Have you heard anything? Nora asked. Mark got married for the second time and moved to Denver. He and Kira didn't have any children, so there's no connection. And it's for the best. He was no prize. Remember how he used to come to family dinners? Always dissatisfied with something, looking down on everyone. I remember. Kira was completely different when she was with him. She was kind of uptight and quiet, but as a child she was so lively and cheerful. We sat at Nora's until lunchtime, talking about this and that, the weather, the neighbors, the news in town. Nora talked about the library, complaining that there were fewer readers now, that everyone was on the internet. Young people don't read at all, and the old people are dying one by one. The city administration says the library will soon be closed because it is unprofitable. What will I do then? Nora sighed. I've been working there for 20 years. I don't know how to do anything else. Who will hire me at 54? We'll think of something, I reassured her. Maybe you can get a job with you, as a librarian's assistant or a cleaner. The main thing is not to sit at home alone. I listened and thought that she really needed someone to talk to. Loneliness kills people just as badly as illness. I've seen people like that. After the death of their spouse, they give up on themselves after a month or two. It's as if life loses its meaning. Around noon, I got ready to go home. Nora walked me to my car, standing on the porch in the same robe, small and lost. Dale, come by more often, she asked. Otherwise, I'll go completely wild. Okay, don't worry. And you try to take care of yourself, cook properly, clean the house. Jim wouldn't want you to live like this. I got home around 3 in the afternoon. I turned on the TV and watched the news. The same old problems with the economy, some scandal in the state government. Then I decided to make something for dinner. Blake promised to come over with his family in the evening. They had been doing that every weekend since Linda died. It was a good tradition. It brought the family closer together. I took a chicken out of the freezer and put it out to thaw. I decided to make a potato casserole. The kids love it. While the chicken was defrosting, I walked around the house and tidied up a bit. The house was quiet and empty. Sometimes I turned on the radio or TV just for background noise so I wouldn't hear my own breathing. Our house is small but cozy. On the first floor, there is a kitchen, a living room, and a small room that Linda and I called the study. There was an old desk, bookshelves, and a reading chair. On the second floor, there are 3 bedrooms, Linda's and mine, and Blake and Kira's. After my wife died, I slept in the guest room. There were too many memories in our bedroom. At 6 in the evening, Blake arrived with Tessa and the children, 10-year-old Colin and 8-year-old Emma. I heard car doors slam and children's voices in the yard. The children immediately ran into the house. Colin was talking about school, and Emma was complaining about her classmates. "Grandpa," Emma shouted, hugging my legs. "We brought you a present." "What kind of present?" "Mom baked an apple pie." Tessa came into the house carrying a large pan covered with a towel. She always baked something for our family dinners: pies, cookies, salads. She was a good woman, a decent woman. Blake was lucky to have her. "Dale, how are you?" she asked, kissing me on the cheek. "How's your back?" "My back is fine. It hurts when it rains, but it's bearable." "How are you? Are the kids healthy?" "Everything's fine. Colin joined the soccer club, and Emma is taking art classes. Blake stayed with me in the hallway, while Tessa went to the kitchen to help set the table, and the kids ran to the living room to watch TV. "Dad, we need to talk," he said seriously. Blake looked like me when I was young, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair. Only his eyes were his mother's, brown and kind. Now I saw concern in those eyes. I immediately understood that it was about Kira. Blake always took his younger sister's problems to heart, even though he was only 3 years older than her. As a child, he protected her from bullies at school, helped her with her homework, and stood up for her when she got into trouble with Linda and me. "What's wrong?" "Kira hasn't been to work for a week. I called her boss at the supermarket, and he said she just stopped coming in. No explanation, no notice. Her phone isn't answering." My heart sank. This was a bad sign. When Kira is doing well, she is always in touch, calling regularly and visiting. We went into the kitchen. Tessa was setting the table, arranging plates and cutlery, but I could see she was listening to our conversation. She knew about Kira's problems. There were no secrets in the family. "Have you been to her house?" I asked, taking a casserole out of the oven. "I went the day before yesterday." "She's not home. The door is locked. She's not answering the phone. Her neighbor, Mrs. Clark, says she saw her a couple of days ago with some men, drunk." My heart sank. So she relapsed after all. 2 years of sobriety down the drain. And I thought she had made it, that the past was behind her. Maybe she just... I started, but I knew there was no excuse. "Dad, you know Kira," Blake interrupted. "When she starts drinking, she disappears for weeks." "Remember what happened 3 years ago?" I remembered. Back then, the police and I searched for her for almost a month. We found her in some basement on the outskirts of town, in terrible condition. Dirty, sick, covered in bruises. Some homeless guy was lying next to her, dead drunk. After that, she was treated in a clinic, went to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and I thought she had gotten over it. She didn't drink at all for 2 years, not a drop. Tessa put my casserole and her apple pie on the table and sat down next to her husband. "Dale, maybe we should report her missing to the police," she said quietly. "As a missing person?" "It's too early," I replied, although I was worried myself. "Kira is a grown woman, 32 years old. The police won't do anything until 48 hours have passed. And besides, if she's drinking, she'll show up when she runs out of money." "Does she have any money?" Blake asked. "I have no idea. We last spoke a month ago. She talked about work and complained that her salary was low. Everything seemed fine." Blake nodded grimly. We called the children to the table and sat down to dinner. Colin talked about school and his new friends on the soccer team. Emma showed us her drawings. She drew a house, a tree, and a dog. It was the usual childish joy, but we adults felt heavy-hearted. "When is Aunt Kira coming to visit us?" Emma asked suddenly. There was an awkward pause. The children didn't know about Kira's alcohol problems. We had shielded them from it. "Aunt Kira is busy at work," Tessa said. "She'll come as soon as she's free." After dinner, the children went to play in the living room, and we stayed in the kitchen drinking tea and eating Tessa's apple pie. The pie was excellent. Crumbly dough, juicy apples with cinnamon. But we didn't feel like eating. Our thoughts were with Kira. "You know, Dad," Blake said, "I think we need to look for her. We can't wait for something to happen. Last time we waited too long." "Where would we look?" "The city isn't small. It's full of dive bars and cheap bars. Rudy can help. He still has connections in the sheriff's department. Rudy Palmer has been my best friend since high school. We played football together, served in the army together, and were best men at each other's weddings. He worked as a county sheriff for 20 years and retired 3 years ago. If anyone could help find Kira, it was him. Rudy knew the city like the back of his hand and knew all the local drunks and drug dealers. "I'll go see Rudy tomorrow," I agreed. "I'll talk to him." Tessa looked at me with sympathy. She had beautiful green eyes and a soft face. A good mother, a caring wife. "Dale, maybe we should try to get her out of this state? Put her in a hospital, find a good doctor? I've read that there are new methods of treating alcoholism." "Tess, we've already tried that. 3 years ago, she was in a private clinic in Billings for 2 months. It cost a lot of money, $15,000. And what good did it do? She lasted 2 years and then went back to her old ways." "But 2 years is a good result," she insisted. "It means the treatment helped." "For an alcoholic, 2 years of sobriety is a lot," Blake sighed. "But relapses are inevitable. I read about it on the internet. It's a chronic, incurable disease. You can only control it. What triggered it? Tessa asked. There must be a reason why she started drinking again. I shrugged. Who knows? Maybe problems at work. Maybe she had a fight with her boyfriend. His name was Rick. Or maybe it's just autumn, seasonal depression. Any excuse will do for alcoholics. We talked a little more. Then Blake and his family left for home. Tessa gave me a big hug as she left. Dale, if you need anything, call us right away. We'll help however we can. Thanks, Tess. You're good people. I was left alone in an empty house where every corner reminded me of the past. Linda's favorite armchair was still in the living room. Green, worn, with a high back. Her cosmetics, perfume bottles, and a comb with a few light hairs on it were lying on the dressing table in the bedroom. I couldn't bring myself to throw these things away. It would be like removing Linda herself from my life. And now thoughts of Kira were also troubling me. Where was she? With whom? In what condition? I imagined the worst-case scenarios, that she would be raped, robbed, killed in a drunken brawl. The city had become dangerous, especially for women. Drug addicts, homeless people, all kinds of lunatics. You name it, they were on the streets. I turned on the TV, but I couldn't concentrate on the programs. I mechanically switched channels. News, commercials, some movie about war. My thoughts revolved around one thing: how to find Kira, how to help her. If it's even possible to help someone who doesn't want help. I went to bed late, around midnight. I tossed and turned in bed for a long time, unable to fall asleep. Outside the window, the wind swayed the branches of the old oak tree that Linda and I had planted when we bought this house 30 years ago. Back then, it was a thin twig, and now it's a huge tree. Back then, it seemed that we had our whole lives ahead of us, that our children would grow up happy and successful, that we would grow old together with my wife. But things turned out differently. Blake, of course, turned out well, hardworking, family-oriented, reliable. The right principles, the right friends, the right wife. But with Kira, something went wrong when she was a teenager. Maybe Linda and I made a mistake somewhere. Maybe we were too strict or, on the contrary, too soft. Maybe our divorce had an impact. Although no, Linda and I never divorced. Maybe it's just fate. Now it doesn't matter what the reason was. Only one thing matters: finding my daughter and trying to help her if she wants it. And if she doesn't, well, you can't save anyone against their will. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy head and back pain. I tossed and turned all night, thinking about Kira, imagining the worst-case scenarios. At 7:30, I got up, drank some coffee, and immediately drove to Rudy's. Rudy lived in a small house on the other side of town, near the railroad tracks. The house was old but well kept. Rudy had always been a stickler for detail, even in retirement. I saw his car, an old Ford pickup, in the driveway, so he was home. Rudy opened the door in his bathrobe and slippers, a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked pretty good for a 61-year-old. His gray hair was neatly trimmed, he had a small beard, and his gray eyes were lively. Only his belly had appeared, the effects of retirement and beer in the evenings. Dale, you're early today. What's going on? Can I come in? We need to talk. Sure, come in. Would you like some coffee? We went into the kitchen. Rudy's place was military-style, neat, everything in its place, the dishes perfectly clean, the newspapers stacked neatly. His wife, Debbie, had died 5 years ago, and they had no children, so he lived alone. Kira is missing, I said without preamble. Rudy placed a cup of coffee in front of me and sat down opposite me. His face became serious. Drinking again? Looks like it. She hasn't been at work for a week, and neighbors have seen her drunk with some guys. Damn, Rudy rubbed his chin. And I thought she had quit for good. She lasted 2 years. That's what I thought. Rudy, I need your help. You know the city. You have connections. Where should I look for her? Rudy thought for a moment, sipping his coffee in small sips. There are a few places where people like her usually hang out. The Red Dog Bar on the outskirts, a dive in an old warehouse near the elevator, a couple of abandoned houses in the industrial zone. Let's start with the bars, then we'll see about the rest. Will you come with me? Are you even asking? Of course I will. Half an hour later, we were driving through town in my pickup truck. Rudy sat next to me, studying the list of addresses he had jotted down on a piece of paper. Over the years as sheriff, he had learned all the seedy places in Helena, knew every bar and den. "Let's start with the Red Dog," he said. "That's where the drunks from all over town usually gather." The bar owner, Vin Morgan, is an old acquaintance of mine. If Kira was there, he knows. The Red Dog Bar was located in the industrial part of town, in an old brick building with no sign. Only a small red neon light in the shape of a dog hung above the entrance. The place was notorious for fights, stabbings, and drug dealing. Rudy had shut it down several times by court order, but after a month or two, it would reopen. We went inside. It was still morning, but there were already a few customers sitting at the bar, mostly homeless people and chronic alcoholics. It smelled of stale beer, cigarettes, and something sour. Behind the bar stood a fat man with tattoos on his arms. This was Vin Morgan. "Oh, Sheriff Palmer," he grinned. "Long time no see. How's retirement?" "Fine, Vin. I need some information. Have you seen a young woman, 32 years old, red hair, medium height?" "Last name Harrison. First name Kira." Vin thought for a moment, wiping a glass with a dirty rag. "Harrison? Ah, Dale's daughter." He nodded in my direction. "Saw her a couple of days ago. She was here with some guy, both of them drunk as skunks. They drank, made a scene, and left. Where did they go? Who was she with?" "No idea. The guy was a stranger, about 40, bearded, dirty, probably some kind of bum." "Has she been back?" "No. Why, is there a problem?" "None of your business," Rudy snapped. "If you see her, call me right away." We left the bar. Our next stop was an old warehouse next to the elevator. The warehouse hadn't been in use for a long time, but drug addicts and alcoholics gathered in the basement. It was a dangerous place, and I understood why Rudy had brought his gun. "Dale, anything could be in there," he warned. "Stay close to me and don't get into a fight unless you have to." We went down to the basement via an iron staircase. It was dark and damp down there, and it smelled of urine and vomit. Several people were lying on mattresses in the corner, some asleep, some simply unconscious. A candle burned on an overturned box, illuminating the gruesome scene. "Hey, is anyone alive?" Rudy shouted. One of the people lying down raised his head, a young guy, skinny as a skeleton, with the sunken eyes of a drug addict. "We're looking for a woman, red-haired, 32 years old," I said. "Have you seen anyone like that?" "Who's asking?" The guy tried to sit up but didn't have the strength. "I'm her father." There was no one here, only us. We searched the entire basement, but Kira wasn't there. We went upstairs and drove on. The next place was an abandoned house in an industrial area where, according to Rudy, homeless people sometimes spent the night. The house was 2 stories high, made of brick, with broken windows and a crooked roof. Factory workers used to live here, but the factory closed 10 years ago, and the house was abandoned. Now it was inhabited by all kinds of scum. We entered through the back door. The house was dark and cold, with trash lying everywhere. There was no one on the first floor, so we went up to the second floor. There, in one of the rooms, we found Kira. She was lying on a dirty mattress next to a man of about 40. Both were drunk beyond consciousness. Kira looked terrible. Her hair was dirty, her face was swollen, and her clothes were torn. She had a bruise on her arm, as if someone had grabbed her hard. "Kira!" I ran up to her and tried to lift her up. She opened her eyes and looked at me with a cloudy gaze. "Dad? How did you get here?" "I'm taking you home." "Get up." I tried to lift my daughter, but the man next to her suddenly grabbed my arm. "Hold on, Uncle." "She's my woman now. I paid for her." The man was dirty, bearded, and smelled of alcohol. He had tattoos on his arms and a scar on his face from his temple to his chin. "Take your hands off her," I said, trying to sound calm. "She owes me money." "She's not going anywhere until she pays me back." "How much does she owe you?" $100. I reached into my pocket for my wallet, but Rudy stopped me. "Dale, don't. It's a scam." The man got up from the mattress, staggered, but remained standing. He was quite large, even though he was drunk. "Listen, old man, your daughter is staying here. Now she'll live with me?" That was the last straw. I punched him in the face as hard as I could. The man fell back onto the mattress, but immediately jumped up and came at me with his fists. A fight broke out. I haven't forgotten how to fight, even though I'm not young anymore. 25 years as a truck driver didn't go to waste. I had to settle disputes in bars and sort things out with loaders. But my back hurt, and I wasn't as young as I used to be. The man turned out to be stronger than he looked. He hit me in the ribs several times and once in the jaw. But Rudy didn't stand by. He came up behind him and hit him on the head with a police baton. The man fell unconscious. "Enough lying around," said Rudy. "Let's get Kira and get out of here." We lifted our daughter off the mattress. She was semi-conscious, barely able to stand. We had to carry her to the car. Kira was muttering something incomprehensible, her head dangling like a rag doll's. "Should we take her to the hospital?" Rudy asked when we sat her in the back seat. "No, take her home. They'll ask questions at the hospital and might report it to the police. I'll take care of her at home. Dale, she might have alcohol poisoning, or she might have taken drugs. We'll see at home. If she's really bad, then we'll go to the hospital." We drove to my house. Kira slept the whole way, sometimes muttering something about Mark, about work, about some money. She looked like a beaten dog, dirty, thin, with bruises on her face and arms. At home, we carried her to the guest room and put her to bed. I brought a basin of warm water, towels, and clean clothes. Rudy helped undress his daughter and wash her. There were many bruises on her body, on her back, legs, and stomach. It was clear that someone had beaten her, and not just once. "Dale, someone raised their hands against her," Rudy said, examining the bruises. "And recently. Yesterday or the day before. Probably that guy from the house. Or someone else. Maybe we should report it to the police. For assault. What's the point? She won't say who beat her. And it's her own fault for getting involved with that scum." We changed Kira into clean clothes and covered her with a blanket. She was in a deep drunken sleep. Her breathing was even. Her pulse was normal. It seemed that her life was not in danger. "I'll stay with her," I said, "in case something happens." "Do you want me to stay and help?" "No, Rudy. You've already done so much. Thank you." "You're welcome. Kira's a good girl. She just lost her way. I hope we can get her out this time." Rudy left, and I stayed to watch over my daughter's bed. I sat in a chair, read the newspaper, and checked her breathing and pulse from time to time. Kira slept until evening, sometimes tossing and turning and moaning in her sleep. Around 8 o'clock in the evening, she woke up. She opened her eyes, looked at me, then looked around. "Where am I?" "At home." "At my place." "How did I get here?" "Rudy and I found you in that dive and brought you here." Kira tried to sit up in bed, but her head spun and she lay back down. "My head is splitting. Can I have some water?" I brought her a glass of water and some aspirin. Kira took the pills and drank a little. "Dad, I don't remember what happened. The last thing I remember is being in a bar with some guy, and then a blackout." "Did that guy hit you?" Kira touched the bruise on her face. "I don't know. Maybe. Everything's a blur." "Kira, why did you start drinking again? You held out for 2 years. My daughter turned away toward the wall. "I don't know, Dad. I just got tired of everything. My job sucks. I make peanuts. I have no friends. I met Rick at the bar. We had a few drinks to cheer ourselves up, and then I couldn't stop." "Where's Rick now?" "No idea. Probably at home. He's a good guy. He just likes to drink too." I didn't argue. I knew that in her condition, she wouldn't understand anything anyway. I had to wait until she sobered up completely, and then we could have a serious conversation. "Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow." "Dad, I'm hungry." "I'll bring you some soup." I heated up some chicken soup and brought it to my daughter in bed. She ate slowly with difficulty, her hands shaking. It was clear that her body was severely depleted. "How many days have you not eaten properly?" "I don't remember. 3 days probably. Or 4. After dinner, Kira fell asleep again. I sat there for a while thinking about what to do next. More treatment, more hospital visits, more hopes and disappointments. How much more could she take? But there was no other way. Kira was my daughter, and I couldn't abandon her, no matter how many times she relapsed. Maybe this time it would work. Maybe she would realize that she had gone too far. Maybe there was a way to save her. Late in the evening, I went to bed in my room, but I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. The house was quiet except for the sound of my daughter tossing and turning in the next room. Tomorrow, a new attempt to pull her out of this hell would begin. Would it work this time? The next few days were a real test. Kira was going through withdrawal, and it was scary to watch. She lay in bed, shaking, sweating, vomiting every half hour. Her temperature rose to 39 degrees and then dropped sharply. Her hands shook so much that she couldn't hold a glass of water. I stayed by her side, feeding her with great effort, giving her medicine, changing her towels. On the first night, she hardly slept, tossing and turning in bed, delirious. She called out names, asked her late mother for forgiveness, and cried. Several times I thought about taking her to the hospital, but she begged me not to. Dad, please, don't take me to the hospital. I'll be fine at home. It's easier with you here. On the third day, she started to feel better. Kira was able to get out of bed, take a shower, and eat normally. The tremors in her hands had almost disappeared, and her temperature had returned to normal. She sat in the kitchen in an old robe, sipping tea. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Better. My head isn't splitting anymore. Just terribly weak. It will pass. The main thing is to stop drinking." Kira nodded, but there was such sadness in her eyes that my heart ached. Blake arrived that same day. I had been calling him every day to tell him how Kira was doing. He was worried and wanted to come earlier, but I asked him to wait until the acute phase had passed. Blake entered the house with a serious expression on his face. Kira was sitting on the sofa in the living room, wrapped in a blanket. She looked better than she had 3 days ago, but she was still pale and thin. "Hi, Kira," he said, sitting down next to her. "Hi, Blake. I'm sorry you're worried about me. Don't apologize. The main thing is that you're alive and home." I made coffee, and we sat down at the kitchen table. Blake was silent for a long time, then looked at his sister. "Kira, what happened? Why did you start drinking again? You held out for 2 years." Kira wrapped her arms around her cup of tea and stared at the table. "I don't know, Blake. It just all built up. My boss was bullying me at work. My pay was late. Rick, we had a fight. He said I was boring, that I wasn't interesting when I was sober. And then there's autumn, the rain. I went out to a bar one evening and ran into some old friends. I decided to have a glass of wine to lift my spirits. And then, I don't remember how it all started." "One glass," Blake shook his head. "Kira, you know there's no such thing as one glass for you. It's either no drinking at all or binge drinking." "I know." She wiped her eyes with her robe sleeve. "I thought I could control it." 2 years have passed. It seemed like the disease had receded. Alcoholism doesn't recede. It just quietens down and then rears its head again. You know that I listened to their conversation and thought about how many times we had already discussed this. After every relapse, the same words, the same promises. But what could I do? I couldn't abandon my daughter, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to believe her words. "Blake, I understand that you don't believe me," Kira said, "and I don't blame you. But this time it's different. I saw where I ended up. That dive bar, those people. I don't want to go back there. Kira, you said that 3 years ago. After rehab, you also swore you wouldn't drink again." "But I didn't drink for 2 years. So what?" "You ended up relapsing." There was a heavy pause. Kira cried quietly. Blake looked out the window and I remained silent. What could I say? My brother was right, and alcoholics' promises are worthless. "Maybe go back to the clinic," Blake suggested. "At least you'll be under medical supervision there." "No," Kira shook her head. "We'll waste Dad's money, and it won't do any good. Last time at the clinic, they just pumped me full of chemicals and didn't solve any problems. I'll manage on my own. With your help." "What about work?" I asked. "You got fired." "I was fired." "I'll have to find a new one." "Okay, we'll help you," Blake said. "But there's one condition. No alcohol." "None at all. And if you slip up again, we won't help you anymore." "I understand." After Blake left, Kira and I were left alone. She sat on the sofa while I read the newspaper. The house was quiet and peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I felt that my daughter was there, alive and well. "Dad," Kira said suddenly. "What?" "I'm sorry. For everything. For making you suffer. For wasting your money and your nerves. I know Mom would be upset if she saw what I'm doing." I put down the newspaper and looked at my daughter. There was genuine pain and remorse in her eyes. "Kira, I'm your father. No matter how many times you fall, I'll pick you up. But I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of thinking every day that you're dying somewhere in a dive bar. It won't happen again, Dad. I swear you've sworn before. But now I mean it. I realize that if I don't stop now, I'll die. Sooner or later, I'll die. From alcohol, from a fight in a dive bar. I don't want to die, Dad. I hugged my daughter, and she cried on my shoulder. She cried for a long time, sobbing as if she were crying out all the pain and despair of the last few weeks. Okay, I said. I'll believe you one more time. But remember, this is your last chance. The next few days were spent rebuilding Karina's life. First, we had to find her a job. The supermarket wouldn't take her back. They knew about her problems. We had to look for something else. I called all my friends and asked my neighbors. It turned out that the laundromat on Central Street needed an employee. The job was simple. Take clothes from customers, sort them, and return them when they were ready. The pay wasn't great, but it would do for a start. Is that okay with you? I asked Karina. Of course. I'm ready for any job, as long as it's honest. We went to the laundry to meet the owner. Her name was Betty Cole, a woman in her 50s, overweight, with a kind face. She had been running the laundry for 15 years, working mainly with local residents. Is she responsible? She asked, looking at Kira. Very responsible, I assured her. She was just sick, but now she's healthy. All right, we'll give it a try. The salary is $1,200 a month. Working hours are from 8 to 6 and Sundays off. That's fine with me, said Kira. Then start tomorrow. Now we had to solve the housing issue. Kira couldn't live in my house permanently. She needed her independence, but she didn't have the money to rent an apartment yet. Dad, let me live with you for now, she suggested. I'll work for a month or two, save up some money, and then rent something. No, I said firmly. You need to live on your own. You won't learn to be independent under my supervision. I found a small one-room apartment in an old building next to a laundromat. The apartment was simple: a room, a kitchen, and a shower. The furniture was old but in good condition. The rent was $1,000 a month plus utilities. That's expensive, Kira said, looking around the apartment. I'll pay for the first 3 months, I decided. After that, you'll pay yourself. Dad, I can't take that much from you. You can. It's an investment in your future. We signed the lease and paid the deposit. Then we went to buy Kira some clothes. She had almost nothing left. Some of her things had been lost during her binge, and some had been ruined. At the store, I bought her some simple work clothes: jeans, shirts, a sweater, and a jacket. Nothing expensive, but all new and neat. Kira tried on the clothes like a child, delighted with every purchase. Dad, thank you for everything, she said in the fitting room. I don't know how to repay you. Don't drink, and that's enough. We also bought groceries, bedding, and dishes. By evening, the apartment was ready to move into. Simple, but clean and cozy. Well, now you have a home, I said, standing in the doorway. I have a chance, Kira corrected me, a chance to start over. On her first day of work, I drove her to the laundromat. Kira was nervous, but tried not to show it. Betty greeted her warmly and showed her what to do. The work turned out to be easy, but it required attention and accuracy. In the evening, I stopped by to pick up my daughter. How's it going? I asked. Fine. Betty is a nice woman, very patient. She showed me everything I need to know. Tomorrow I'll be working on my own. Are there many customers? Quite a few. Mostly local residents, elderly people. They bring in blankets and quilts that can't be washed at home. I drove Kira home and helped her carry the grocery bags. Can you manage on your own? Yes, Dad. I'm not a little girl anymore. If you need anything, call me right away. Okay. The next 2 weeks passed quietly. Kira went to work and called me in the evenings to tell me how things were going. Betty was happy with her new employee. Kira was punctual and hardworking. On weekends, my daughter came to my place for lunch. We cooked together, watched TV, and talked. She looked better. Her cheeks were rosy, her eyes were clear, and her hands had stopped shaking. How are things in the apartment? I asked. Everything's fine. The neighbors are quiet, it's warm, and there's hot water. What else do you need? Don't you ever feel lonely? Sometimes. But loneliness is better than bad company. I was proud of my daughter. It seemed that this time everything was working out. A job, an apartment, a normal life. Maybe the worst was behind her. A month later, Kira received her first paycheck. She came to me that same day, happy and excited. "Dad, look," she said, showing me the envelope with the money. "I earned this myself. Honestly earned it. Well done. Now you're an independent woman. Dad, take half. For the apartment, for clothes, for everything. No, don't. Spend it on yourself. Buy something for the house, for your enjoyment. Then I'll make you dinner. At my place. Come tomorrow evening." The next day I went to visit Kira. She made roast chicken with potatoes, salad, and baked an apple pie. The apartment was clean and cozy, with potted flowers everywhere. "Where did you get the flowers?" I asked. "I bought them at the market. I want my home to be beautiful." We had dinner by candlelight and talked about work and plans for the future. Kira told me about her laundry customers and laughed at funny stories. For the first time in a long time, she looked truly happy. "You know, Dad," she said over tea, "I've realized something. Happiness isn't in alcohol. Happiness is in simple things. In work, in home, in the love of your loved ones." "You're right. I won't drink anymore. Not a drop. I promise you." "I believe you," I said, although deep down I still had my doubts. But so far, everything was going well. Kira was working, paying for her apartment, living a normal life. The first month of her independent life passed without any setbacks. Maybe this time it would really work out. 2 months passed quickly and peacefully. Kira worked at the laundromat, paid her rent on time, and called me regularly. She came to visit on weekends, we cooked dinner, watched TV, and talked about everyday things. She looked healthy and happy, had gained a little weight, and her eyes were clear. I was beginning to believe that this time it had worked out. Betty from the laundry praised Kira, saying that she was a responsible worker, that the customers loved her, and that there were no problems. She even raised her salary a little, to $1,400. Kira was happy and planned to save money and buy a car. "Dad, can you believe I haven't had a drink in 6 months?" she said one Sunday as we sat in the kitchen drinking tea. "I think I've finally done it." "Don't say finally," I said cautiously. "Just keep it up." "You still don't believe me." "I believe you. But I know that alcoholism is an insidious disease. It can lie dormant for years and then reappear. That won't happen to me. I've seen where it leads." Never again, I nodded, although deep down I remained cautious. I'd heard those words too many times. Blake also became calmer. At first he called me every week, asked about Kira, and talked to her himself. Gradually his anxiety subsided, and he stopped constantly monitoring his sister. "Maybe she really is recovered," he said one day. "People do pull themselves together sometimes." "Maybe," I agreed, not wanting to spoil his optimism. My birthday was coming up in mid-November, on the 23rd. I was turning 59. Blake suggested celebrating at my house, inviting relatives and friends. "Dad, it's been a long time since we've had a proper family celebration. Kira's healthy now, so we can all get together." "Okay," I agreed, but nothing fancy. Just a simple dinner. We decided to invite Blake and his family, my sister Nora, Rudy, and his new girlfriend Carol, whom he met at a senior citizens club. Kira was also supposed to come. I wanted to invite her formally so she would feel like part of the family. On Friday, November 21st, I decided to stop by my daughter's place after work and invite her to the birthday party in person. I could have called, but I wanted to see her, to see how she was doing. The last time I visited her was a month ago. It was around 7 in the evening when I pulled up to her house. The old 4-story building looked gloomy in the evening light of the street lamps. Kira lived on the second floor. As I climbed the stairs, I heard loud music coming from her apartment. This surprised me. Kira never listened to music that loud, and the neighbors wouldn't have tolerated it. I knocked on the door. The music stopped, and I heard footsteps and voices. "Who's there?" Kira's voice sounded strange, hoarse. "It's me, Dad." There was a long pause. Then the door opened, and I saw my daughter. She was drunk. Her eyes were cloudy, her face was red, and her hair was tousled. She was wearing a dirty t-shirt and jeans. "Dad? Why are you here?" "I wanted to invite you to my birthday party," I said, feeling my heart sink. Behind Kira, I saw the apartment. There were bottles on the table, vodka, beer, wine. Cigarette butts, empty cans, and food scraps were scattered everywhere. Three men I didn't know were sitting on the sofa. They were all drunk and looked at me with curiosity and aggression. Kira, what's going on? I asked quietly. Nothing special. Some friends came over. We're celebrating. What are you celebrating? Just Friday. I entered the apartment without waiting for an invitation. The three men got up from the sofa. One was about 40, with a beard and tattoos on his arms. The second was younger, thin, with metal teeth. The third was older than the others, fat, bald, in a dirty shirt. "Who's this visiting us?" asked the bearded man, swaying on his feet. "This is my father," said Kira. "Oh, Daddy," laughed the thin man. "Kira, you didn't say your dad was so serious." "Leave," I said, looking at them. "Excuse me?" The bearded man took a step toward me. I said, "Leave my daughter's apartment. Your daughter invited us. We are guests." "Kira," I turned to my daughter. "Explain to me what is going on." She avoided my gaze, fiddling with the edge of her t-shirt. "Dad, don't make a mountain out of a molehill. We just had a few drinks." "A few?" I pointed to the table. "There are 3 bottles of vodka there." "Okay, we drank a lot. But that doesn't mean I'm drinking again. I just relaxed once." "Once? Kira, you know there's no such thing as once for you." The fat man belched loudly and said, "Hey, old man, don't bother the girl. She's an adult. She can decide for herself what to do." "Shut up," I said without turning to him. "What?" He stood up, staggering. "Dad, please don't make a scene," Kira asked. "The guys will be leaving soon." "What scene?" The bearded man laughed. "We're sitting here peacefully, not bothering anyone. And then this old man shows up and starts telling everyone what to do." I took out my phone and started dialing Rudy's number. "What are you doing?" Kira asked. "Calling for help. These guys aren't going to leave on their own." The bearded man tried to grab my phone, but I managed to push his hand away. Rudy answered on the first ring. "Dale? What's going on?" "Rudy, come quickly. Kira's drinking again, and there are some guys in her apartment. Do you remember the address?" "I remember." "I'm on my way." I hung up and dialed Blake's number. "Dad?" My son's voice sounded surprised. "Blake, come to Kira's. Urgently. She's had a breakdown." "What? How did she have a breakdown?" "I'll explain later. Just come quickly." Meanwhile, the 3 men became more aggressive. They surrounded me, and the bearded one pushed me in the shoulder. "Hey, old man, get out of here. Kira invited us, not you." "I'm not going anywhere without my daughter." "Your daughter is staying with us. She's having fun with us, right, Kira?" Kira stood by the wall, drunk and confused. Her face showed a mixture of shame and fear. "Dad, go home. I'll come tomorrow and explain everything." "Tomorrow?" "Kira, look at yourself. You promised." "Well, I slipped up once. It happens." "Once?" I pointed to the table. "How many days have you been drinking?" 3 days, she said quietly. 3 days, and you didn't go to work?" "I said I was sick." The fat man came closer, reeking of alcohol and sweat. "Grandpa, you're annoying. Go home while you're still in one piece. Or what? Or I'll punch you in your old face." He swung at me, but I managed to dodge him. In my youth, working as a truck driver, I often got into fights in bars and parking lots. The skills remained. I punched the fat man in the stomach, and he doubled over, gasping for breath. But then 2 others jumped on me. The bearded one tried to grab me by the throat, while the skinny one punched me in the back. A fight broke out. It was difficult for me. My age and bad back were taking their toll. But my anger gave me strength. These bastards were getting my daughter drunk and corrupting her. "Dad, stop it," Kira shouted. The bearded man turned out to be stronger than the others. He knocked me to the floor and started to choke me. I tried to break free, but I didn't have enough strength. My vision darkened. Then Rudy burst into the apartment. He immediately assessed the situation, grabbed a baton, and hit the bearded man on the head. He fell to the floor unconscious. "Dale, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, getting up, breathing heavily. The skinny and fat guys were scared and pressed themselves against the wall. "We didn't do anything wrong," stammered the skinny one. "We were just visiting." "Get out of here," said Rudy. "Quickly." They grabbed the bearded man by the arms and dragged him to the exit. But the fat man stopped at the door. "Kirka will come back tomorrow. You still have a bottle." "No one is coming back," I said. "Who are you to forbid it?" "I'm her father." Father, the fat one spat on the floor, your daughter is a grown woman. If she wants to drink with us, she will drink. Something inside me snapped. All the pain of the last few months, all the hopes and disappointments turned into blind rage. I grabbed the fat man by the chest and dragged him to the window. Dad, what are you doing? Kira screamed. I didn't hear her. I opened the window and pushed the man out. He fell into the courtyard from the second floor, screaming loudly. Then it went quiet. My God, whispered Rudy. Dale, what have you done? I went to the window and looked down. The fat man was lying on the grass, moaning, but moving. So he was alive. Get out, I said to the skinny man. And don't come back here again. He nodded and quickly ran out of the apartment. The bearded guy also came to his senses, got up and staggered toward the exit. Bitches, he muttered. Fucking cops. When they left, silence hung in the apartment. Kira sat on the couch crying. Rudy stood by the window, looking out at the courtyard. The fat guy got up and is limping to his car, he said. He's alive. At that moment, Blake ran into the apartment. His face was white as a sheet. What happened here? Some guy was lying downstairs. Now he's gone somewhere. Kira started drinking again, I said quietly. She's been drinking with these thugs for 3 days. Blake looked at his sister, then at the trashed apartment, the overturned table, broken bottles, blood on the floor. Kira, what are you doing? Blake, I didn't mean to. I just ran into some old friends and they invited me out for a drink. I thought I could control it. Control it? Blake sat down next to her. Kira, look at yourself. Look at what you've done. I know, I understand everything, but I can't stop. She cried, rocking back and forth. She looked pathetic, dirty, drunk, broken. I sat down in a chair, feeling my strength drain away. All the anger was gone, leaving only endless fatigue. Why, Kira? I asked. Why are you doing this? I don't know, Dad. Honestly, I don't know. Everything was fine. My job, my apartment. And then I met Danny, the bearded one. He said he missed me and suggested we have a drink to celebrate. I refused, but he insisted. He said 1 glass of beer wouldn't hurt. 1 glass, Blake repeated bitterly. And where was that 1 glass? Then he brought his friends over. He said they had some good vodka. I tried to kick them out, but they wouldn't leave. And then I wanted to drink myself. I wanted to forget. Forget what? Everything. My job at this stupid laundry, my loneliness, the fact that life has passed me by. Kira stood up, staggered, and grabbed the wall. I'm 32 years old, and what do I have? A job that pays peanuts, a rented apartment, no one around. All my friends are either married, drunk, or dead. And me? Will I be washing other people's sheets until I'm old? You could find another job, study, meet a good person, Blake said. Study what? With what money? And good people don't want to get involved with an alcoholic. You're not an alcoholic if you don't drink. I'm always an alcoholic, even when I'm not drinking. It's a disease that never goes away. She started crying again and fell onto the sofa. I went over to her and sat down next to her. Kira, my daughter. I put my arms around her shoulders. Why didn't you tell me you were feeling bad? We would have figured something out. What would you have done? Given me more money? Believed my promises again? I'm always ready to help you. But you can't live for me. You can't make me happy. I didn't know what to say. She was right. No one can make another person happy. Kira, said Rudy, who had been silent until then, what if we try again? Find a good clinic, new doctors. What's the point? I've already been treated. It helped for 2 years, and then it was the same thing all over again. But 2 years is a long time. That means the treatment works, and then another relapse, and another until death. There was a heavy pause. No one knew what to say. The room smelled of alcohol and tobacco, and there was trash everywhere. Okay, I said, standing up. The main thing now is to bring her to her senses. Rudy, help me carry her to the car. Where are we taking her? Blake asked. To my place. She'll be safe there. Don't, Dad, Kira protested weakly. I can handle this myself. You've already handled it. Now it's my turn. We lifted Kira off the couch. She was so drunk she could barely stand. Rudy supported her on one side and I on the other. "What about the apartment?" Blake asked. "We'll clean it up tomorrow," I said. "Right now, the main thing is to get her out of here." We went down to the yard. There were traces of blood on the grass. Apparently, the fat man had really hit himself when he fell. But he could walk, so it couldn't be anything serious. We put Kira in my car, and Blake sat next to her. Rudy followed in his pickup truck. On the way home, Kira tried to get out of the car several times. "Dad, stop. I feel sick." "Hang in there. You'll be home soon?" "I don't want to go home. I want to go to Danny's. Danny gets you drunk. Danny understands me. You don't." "What don't we understand? That I'm hopeless? That I can't be saved?" "Don't say that," Blake asked. "It's true. I'm an alcoholic, and I always will be, no matter how many times I'm treated." At home, we put Kira in the same guest room where she had been 2 months ago. We took off her dirty clothes, washed her, and put her in clean ones. She was semi-conscious, barely responding to our actions. "She'll sleep until morning," Rudy said, "and tomorrow the withdrawal will begin." "I'm ready," I said. "We've been through this before." Blake sat in the kitchen, gloomy and depressed. "Dad, I can't take it anymore." "How much more can we take? She's killing us with her drinking. She's my daughter. And my sister. But I'm tired. Tired of being afraid she'll die. Tired of believing her promises." "What do you suggest?" "I don't know. Maybe let her live the way she wants? Maybe we're just getting in her way by trying to save her." "Blake, she'll die without our help." "And with our help?" "Another relapse. Another treatment. More hope. More disappointment. It's a vicious circle." I understood my son. He was right. We had been going around in circles for several years. But how could I abandon my own child? "All right," I said. "We'll talk tomorrow." When she sobers up, Rudy went home, and Blake also left to be with his family. I was left alone with my drunk daughter. I sat in a chair next to her bed, listening to her breathe. From time to time, she moaned in her sleep, calling for her mother, asking for forgiveness. My heart felt heavy and empty. It seemed that all my efforts were in vain. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, Kira would return to the bottle again and again. Maybe Blake was right, and I should just let her go. But how could I let go of my own daughter? How could I accept that she was dying before my eyes? In the morning, a new cycle would begin. Withdrawal, treatment, promises, hopes, and then another relapse. When would it end? When she died, or when I couldn't take it anymore? It was raining outside and the wind was shaking the bare branches of the trees. Winter was coming, and so was my birthday. But I didn't feel like celebrating anymore. 2 days had passed since the fight at Kira's apartment. My daughter was lying at my house going through another withdrawal. This time she was handling it better. Apparently, she had only been drinking for 3 days, so her body hadn't had time to get too poisoned. By the evening of the second day, she was already able to get out of bed, take a shower, and eat. "Dad," she said, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea, "I'm very ashamed of what happened." "I'm ashamed too," I replied. "Ashamed that I threw a man out of the window. It's his own fault. He shouldn't have provoked you. Kira, what are we going to do next?" She was silent for a long time, looking out the window at the bare trees. "I don't know, Dad. I honestly don't know. I think I understand everything, but I can't stop. Maybe back to the clinic." "I've thought about that, but you've already spent so much money and it hasn't helped." "Money isn't the main thing." "It is. Your pension isn't much, and I just keep spending and spending." I didn't argue. Money really was a problem. 3 years ago, I had spent $15,000 on treatment at a private clinic, almost all my savings. I didn't have that kind of money now. "Okay," I said. "The main thing now is to make it to my birthday. The day after tomorrow is Sunday, and we're having guests. You'll come, won't you?" "Of course I'll come, and I'll behave myself, I promise." My birthday, November 23rd, fell on a Sunday. From the morning I was preparing for the guests, buying groceries, cleaning the house, preparing food. Kira helped me, looking normal, her hands not shaking. "Who's coming?" she asked, cutting vegetables for the salad. "Blake and his family, Aunt Nora, Rudy and his girlfriend. And you. Is Blake still angry with me?" "He's not angry. He's upset. I see. He's doing everything right, and I'm just causing problems. There was bitterness in her voice, but I decided not to pursue the subject. A birthday is not the time for difficult conversations. By 4 o'clock, the guests began to arrive. Nora was the first to arrive. She looked better than she had a month ago. Her hair was done, she was wearing makeup, and she had a new dress. Happy birthday, Dale! She hugged me and handed me a gift. It's a book about fishing. I thought you'd like it. Thanks, Nora. How are you? Feeling better? Much better. You know, I joined a club for widows and widowers. There are such nice people there. We meet and talk. It's not so lonely. Half an hour later, Blake and his family arrived. The children immediately ran up to me with their congratulations, and Emma handed me a homemade card with a drawing on it. Grandpa, that's you fishing, she explained. It's a beautiful drawing. Thank you, sweetheart. Tessa brought a big birthday cake, and Blake brought a bottle of good whiskey. He congratulated me quietly, still upset about the situation with Kira. Rudy was the last to arrive with his girlfriend, Carol. Carol was a pleasant woman of about 55 who worked as a nurse in a hospital. They had met at a dance club and had been dating for 6 months. Dale, I wish you happiness and health, Rudy said, shaking my hand, and may all your problems be solved. We sat down at the table in the living room. I set the large table, put out the best dishes, and lit the candles. It was a beautiful celebration. The whole family together, good food, gifts. Kira sat between Nora and Blake, quiet, hardly speaking. I caught her eye several times. She looked at everyone with a kind of sad envy. She was probably thinking about how good and stable everyone else's lives were. Dale, Nora said, raising her glass of wine, let's drink to the birthday boy. To your health and to your children bringing you joy. Everyone raised their glasses. Kira also took her glass, but it only contained water. She had asked for water instead of wine. To Dad, said Blake, for always supporting us. To Grandpa, shouted the children. We drank, and then Kira suddenly stood up. I want to make a toast too, she announced. Kira, sit down, Blake said quietly. No, I want to say it. Her voice was strange, too loud. Let's drink to my father. To the man who has spent his whole life teaching everyone how to live. I sensed something was wrong. There was anger in Kira's voice. Kira, I said warningly. What, Kira? She turned to me. Can I tell the truth on your birthday? What truth? The truth about what a wonderful father you are. About how you control everyone around you. A tense silence hung over the table. The children stopped eating, and the adults looked at Kira with concern. Kira, don't, Nora pleaded. Why not? Kira grabbed Nora's wine glass and took a big sip. You all think I'm bad and Dad is good, but I'll tell you the truth. Kira, you don't drink, Tessa said. I do now. Kira finished the wine from Nora's glass and reached for the bottle. Enough pretending. Blake tried to take the bottle from her, but she pulled her hand away. Don't touch me. Nobody touch me. Kira, calm down, I said. Not in front of the children. In front of the children? She laughed hysterically. But in front of the children, it was okay to discipline me with a belt? In front of the children, it was okay to yell at Mom for every little thing? Kira, what are you saying? Blake asked in surprise. I'm telling the truth. She turned to her brother. You don't remember because you were older, so you were punished less. But Dad disciplined me until I was 14. I punished you when you misbehaved, and I said, like any father. Misbehaved? Kira stood up, swaying. I got spanked for every bad grade, every time I was late, every wrong word. Kira, stop it, Blake said sternly. This is not the time or place. When is it? She poured herself some wine from the bottle. When can we tell the truth about our wonderful family? Rudy got up from the table. Maybe I should leave. Sit down, Kira said. You're a friend of the family. You should know the truth. Know what a wonderful father my dad is. Kira, stop, I asked. You're drunk. You don't know what you're saying. I do know. I finally understand. She took another sip of wine. You've controlled everyone your whole life. You drove Mom to the point where she would have left you if she hadn't gotten sick. That's not true, I said quietly. It's true, Mom told me herself when she was sick. She said you suffocated her with your care, your control. Those words stabbed me like a knife in the heart. Linda had indeed complained in recent years that I was too protective of her, but I thought I was doing it out of love. Kira, Mom was sick. She said a lot of things, Blake defended him. Don't defend him, Kira shouted. You didn't see how he treated her, how he controlled her every move. I cared for her, I said. Cared, Kira laughed. You smothered her with care. And now you're smothering me. You meddle in my life. Decide who I should be friends with, where I should work, how I should live. I'm helping you, I objected. Helping? She moved closer to me. You're controlling me, just like you controlled Mom, just like you controlled us when we were kids. Kira, you're wrong, Nora said. Dale is a good father. Good? Kira turned to her aunt. Aunt Nora, do you remember how he yelled at Uncle Jim for drinking beer? Jim drank too much, Nora said uncertainly. Everyone around us drank too much. Everyone was wrong. Only Dad knew how to live. The children sat with frightened faces, and Tessa hugged them, trying to protect them from the scandal. Kira, calm down, said Rudy. You're upsetting everyone. And who upset me? She shouted. Who turned me into an alcoholic? You did, I said. No one forced you to drink. You did! With your control, your lectures. She came very close. Do you know what Mom said to me before she died? What? She said, don't let Dad control you. Live your own life. Mom didn't say that, Blake objected. She did. You weren't there. You were at work. Kira grabbed her glass. Now listen, everyone. Enough of this despot. She swung and poured wine in my face. The red wine ran down my face and stained my shirt. Stop complaining about everyone and meddling in other people's lives, she shouted. Everyone sat in shock. No one moved, no one said anything. The children were crying, and Tessa was holding them close. I wiped my face with a napkin and got up from the table. I'm sorry, I said to the guests. The party is over. I left the living room and went up to my room. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. I could hear voices downstairs. The guests were calming Kira down and getting ready to leave. Half an hour later, silence reigned in the house. Kira had apparently left with everyone else. I didn't care. I sat in my room for a long time, thinking about my daughter's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe I really did control the family too much. Linda sometimes complained that I didn't give her any breathing room, but I thought I was taking care of her. Late in the evening, there was a knock on the door. Blake entered. Dad, how are you? Fine. Kira left. She said she's not coming back. Let her go. Dad, don't take her words to heart. She was drunk. She didn't know what she was saying. Maybe she knew exactly what she was saying. What do you mean? Maybe I really do control everyone. I drove your mom crazy. I nag you with my advice. I try to change Kira. Dad, you care about us. That's normal. Normal? I looked at my son. Then why is Kira drinking herself to death? Why has Mom been unhappy these last few years? Mom had cancer. Of course she was unhappy. Not just because of the cancer, Blake. Kira's right. I was too controlling. Blake sat down next to me on the bed. Dad, even if that's true, what do we do now? Leave Kira to her fate? I don't know. I'm tired, son. Tired of fighting her alcoholism. Tired of hoping and being disappointed. I understand. I'm tired too. We sat in silence. Outside the window, snow was falling. The first snow of the winter. Blake, what if she's right about me? What do you mean? What if I'm really to blame for everything? What if my upbringing made her an alcoholic? Dad, many children grow up in strict families and don't become alcoholics. Every person has a choice. But maybe I deprived her of that choice? Maybe I stifled her so much that she couldn't find another way to live? Blake didn't answer. Apparently, he had doubts too. The next morning on Monday, I made a decision. I waited until 11 o'clock and called Karina's landlord, Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, this is Dale Harrison. I will no longer be paying my daughter's rent. What happened? Nothing happened. She's just a grown woman and should pay for her own housing. I understand. But I have a contract with you, not with her. If you don't pay, I'll have to evict her. Do what you have to do. Okay, I'll give her 2 days to find the money. If she doesn't, I'll evict her. I hung up the phone and felt relieved. For the first time in a long time, I had decided not to help Kira. Let her live as she wants, without my control. On Tuesday evening, Kira called me. Dad, Mr. Davis said you stopped paying for the apartment. Is that true? It's true. Why? Because you're right. I control too much. Now live on your own. But I don't have any money. I haven't worked for 3 days. Betty fired me. You'll find a job. You'll earn money. Dad, you can't do this. I'll be evicted tomorrow. That's your problem, Kira. You said yourself that I was meddling in your life. I won't anymore. Dad, that's not what I meant. I was drunk. I was talking nonsense. Maybe you were telling the truth. In any case, I won't interfere in your life anymore. Dad, please, give me another chance. You've had plenty of chances. I hung up. Kira called back several more times, but I didn't answer. On Wednesday morning, Mr. Davis called me. Mr. Harrison, I had to evict your daughter. She couldn't pay the rent. I understand. She asked me to tell you that it's all your fault. Thanks for the information. On Wednesday evening, Kira came to my house. I heard her knocking on the door, shouting something. I looked out the window. She was standing on the porch, drunk with a bag in her hands. Dad! Open the door, she shouted. I didn't open it. Dad, I know you're home. Your car is here. I sat in the living room, listening to her screams. My heart was breaking, but I didn't move. Open up, Dad. I have nowhere to go. Kira banged on the door and kicked it. You're my father. How could you abandon me? Then she started saying something else, but I wasn't listening. I covered my ears with my hands, trying not to hear her. An hour later, she stopped banging. I looked out the window. She was gone. Only her bag was lying on the porch. I went out and picked up the bag. It contained dirty clothes, an empty bottle, and some pieces of paper. One piece of paper had the words, Dad, forgive me. I love you written on it in uneven handwriting. I took the note and went back inside. I held it in my hands for a long time, reading it over and over again. Then I tore it up and threw it away. I didn't sleep all night thinking about Kira. Where was she? With whom? In what condition? But in the morning, I still didn't answer the phone when she called. I made a decision, and I will stick to it. No more control, no more help. Let Kira live her life, whatever it may be. In the end, I stated 3 simple truths. First, you can't change the past, but you can change the future. Second, everyone has the right to their own boundaries. Third, a person's strength is manifested in their ability not only to forgive, but also to make decisions for themselves. Now, I want to ask you, would you forgive or would you draw a line under it? Write your opinion in the comments and tell us where you are listening to us from.